Of all the rocks upon which we build our lives, we are most dependent on the family. The family is that most important foundation. And we are called to recognize and honor how critical every father is to that foundation. But if we're honest with ourselves, we'll admit that too many fathers are also missing. Too many fathers are MIA. Too many fathers are AWOL. Missing from too many lives and too many homes. They've abandoned their responsibilities. They're acting like boys instead of men. And the foundations of our family have suffered because of it. Children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime. They're 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 20 times more likely to end up in prison. Half, a number that's doubled since we were children. We know the statistics that children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime. They're 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 20 times more likely to end up in prison. They're more likely to have behavioral problems or run away from home or become teen parents because the father wasn't in the home.
One of the ways you could stress it is by defining the family unit as the fundamental basis of oppression, and that all other family arrangements are fine, and that it's okay to love whoever you want for as long as you want or for as short as you want, like, let's say, the next hour, and that's perfectly acceptable. And then you throw that into the culture, which is what we did in the early 1960s. And then you might ask, well, who is that going to destabilize first? And the answer to that's crystal clear. The lower you are on the socioeconomic ladder, the more catastrophic the results of a sociological intervention like that are likely to be. And so the Black community tended to be at the lower end of the pyramidal distribution. And so that radical sociological change that emerged in the 1960s affected them first. And Black families started to fall apart in the 60s, and that's been accelerating ever since until we get the numbers that you are pointing to. But one of the things we should absolutely 100% be clear about is that Hispanics and Caucasians are not far behind. So there has been a decline in marital stability in the white and the Hispanic community since the 60s. And if you match the curves, the Hispanics and the whites are about 10 to 15 years behind the Black community. So that cataclysmic collapse is starting to spread through our entire culture. It's just that the Black population happens to be at the forefront of it. And we know perfectly well that fatherlessness, apart from the biological effects, early puberty for girls, why do girls hit puberty early if they don't have a father around? Well, how about so they become sexually attractive earlier so that a man shows up? How about that for a theory, which seems to be precisely the explanation? And so that's not exactly so good, because probably it's not that good to throw yourself into a sexual relationship when you're still psychologically a child, despite the fact that you might be physically mature. So that's quite the catastrophe. And fatherless boys are much more likely to be in prison. They're much more likely to drop out of school. They're much less likely to attain gainful employment. They're much less likely to be reliable marital partners. And so it's a cascading effect. It's a complete bloody catastrophe. And even the conservatives have been stupid about this. You know, I talked to a conservative leader the other day, and I asked him about families, and he said, well, you know, as long as 2 people love each other. And I think, no, I don't think so. Not just as long as 2 people love each other. Love each other, what does that mean, love? Without commitment. Does it mean love for tonight? Does it mean sexual desire? Or does it mean that you're going to commit to someone for decades, for better or for worse? Like, what does love exactly mean here? And then, you know, is there a model for love other than monogamous, child-centered, long-term committed family? It's like, well, can 3 people be a family? How about 5? How about 7 swapping sexual partners? How about a man and a man? That's not a model that's going to duplicate well across society because two men have a very difficult time reproducing, in case anyone hasn't noticed. And so the fatherless catastrophe is definitely, it's germane, Matt, and it's not an issue that people are prone to highlight because they don't want to be tarred with the brush of, prejudice. And prejudice and judgment, they're hard to dissociate from one another. But I can't see any other model for long-term viability of children than stable, committed, long-term, child-centered, heterosexual, monogamous couples. And people can go to hell in a handbasket, as far as I'm concerned, whatever way they want. But we're bloody fools if we think there's any ideal at the center of a culture that can replace that.